So now we want to talk about exiting households or individuals from program enrollments. So when do we want to exit someone or from a program enrollment or a household? We want to exit them when they are either no longer receiving services from our program. Then we want to exit them from the project. So we can either exit the whole household, or we can exit an individual that's only part of the household. And then if the person that we're exiting is the head of household and the rest of the remaining folks are staying in the program, we want to be sure to identify a new program head of household first. To show you what that looks like, I'm going to start with our example here. And what we have is we have one kid and 2 adults, and I want to exit my Tina Test 2, but I want to keep my parent as the head of household. So what I need to do is go into here, click on my edit button, and I'm going to make this person the self or the head of household. I'm going to make this person other related member, and the kid is also an this is where it can depend. It could be that this is still the head of, would be the head of household's child, or it could even be other non-relation member. And we want to hit save changes. And now that I've done that, my parent is listed as the head of household. The anniversary date would now change to the anniversary date of this person for whoever remains in the program, but I can now safely exit this person here. And so to exit them from this program, I'm going to go over here to the exit screen. I'm going to click on exit. And right now I only want to exit them. If I was exiting the entire household, I would toggle everybody on. But right now I'm just going to keep this person on. I'm going to hit end of program. And I'm going to select the date out. Oops. And I'm going to say this is going to happen in the future because we have our annual assessment there. And what I'm going to say is that they, where they're exiting to is they are going to be staying or living with family on a permanent tenure. So for exit screens, this is really important, is to record where are people going after they finish our programs. So again, this is very similar to all the other drop downs. What I would like to point out is we do have the staying or living with family or friends on a temporary tenure, and then we have one that's a permanent tenure. When we say temporary, what we're really meaning is the family member or friend, did they give a time limit to how long the client can live there? For example, you can come move in with me, but if my landlord catches you, I'll be evicted, so you can only stay for 2 weeks. That's a temporary basis. If somebody is just beginning college and the family member says, hey, you can stay here while you're going to school, because there is no end date to the college date yet. And even if the end date was theoretically they should be done in 2 years, it's actually a permanent tenure. So that's kind of the difference. So we're going to say they moved out on a permanent tenure and that they have completed the program. But where we do have other options is death is an option, unknown or disappeared is an option. Typically, if we're saying unknown or disappeared, we're saying that they exited with no exit interview. But for this purposes, I'm going to say that they completed the program. And then again, here are those same questions that we saw on the enrollment screen, the status screen, and the annual screen. This really is, did anything change on these benchmark data elements? And if nothing has changed, then we can scroll all the way down to the bottom. And then what will happen is it will automatically end our services for us. And on this particular one, what we would need to do is, what you'll see is the end date was here, and it's going to change the end date to the day before we closed our program. And for the housing service, I would want it to do that because they would have been housed with here. For the case management service, if I didn't provide any other case management services, then I probably want to keep this same end date. And it's not letting me do that right now. And once I'm all done, I want to hit save and close. And it looks like we were missing this question. So we're going to say yes. And once we're all done, it says your changes have been saved, and now we are done. So if I go to programs, this would be essentially, if it was May 2nd, 2021, this would be a closed program enrollment. And then if we want to go to our other folks, so our other members are here, I can click on the edit button and then go into the active program. And I still have, my kid is still active. My test adult, it's showing that they were enrolled with these other two people, but it shows the start and end date. And my parent is still active. And as I said, my kid is still active. So what I want to do is end this for everybody now. So to do that, we're just going to go through the same process. We're going to edit. I'm going to exit my adult. I'm going to pick both of them and hit end program. And I'm going to have to complete this screen for both folks. And what it's doing is it's revisiting my exit screen for the other person to make sure that's what I was wanting. I had set up the end date for what, 5/02/21. And now it's going to do this for my kid. So I'm going to do my kid the same date. However, with the human condition, folks could exit programs at different times. So while typically people start and exit at the same time, it's not always true. And I remember they were staying with family permanently. They completed the program. And we just want to go through and maybe by the end of this, they had also completed 12th grade. And we want to exit the services and then hit save and next. And then it's going to end the program for the parent. And now that we've ended the program, we should be good. I'm going to go to programs. And what we should see on each one of them is within here, we should see an end date for all of them. So then we have the end date. It's still showing active over here because we made our end date in the future. So that's why I did that. If our end date was in the past, then it would be a closed program. I'll show you how that looks. So here's an example of a closed program enrollment. the dates are in the past. And just so you can kind of see the difference between the open and the closed, when I click on the edit button here, you'll see that the box is red, and it has been 464 days since this program end date. So when are the times that we exit folks from programs? Well, for some projects or programs, depending on if their housing status changes. So for example, with street outreach, if their housing status changes, then we need to exit them from our program. So for street outreach, it is the guidance that they should, when someone is enrolled in street outreach, they are street homeless. So when their housing status changes, we should be exiting them from that project. In other words, if they actually become stably housed, move in with friends or family, or even if they move into an emergency shelter because their housing status has changed. So for someone who was in street outreach, what their housing status would change to is being homeless unsheltered. When they're in an emergency shelter, they would be homeless and sheltered. And then for homeless prevention programs, if they were at risk of becoming homeless prior to entry and then subsequently did lose their housing while they were enrolled in the program, you would need to exit them from that project because they are no longer at risk. They are literally homeless. So in cases like that, what you ideally would have is, if you are still able to provide services to those individuals, is you would have either an outreach project or a supportive services project where you can then enroll them into a different project. And then permanent housing projects, we do need to end their enrollment when their housing status goes back to homeless if they were housed during our program enrollment. So to kind of show you what that looks like, again, this is street outreach. When they become housed, we have to exit them. And if you can continue services, you would need to do so in a supportive services project or a homeless prevention project. And for homeless prevention, if they become homeless, you would need to close that enrollment and then enroll them in a supportive services or a street outreach if you're going to continue to provide services. But for the permanent housing, which includes rapid rehousing, permanent housing, the housing with services, the housing only projects, once they have a move-in date and then they become homeless again, we do need to exit them from the program, but you can re-enroll them if you're going to help them obtain and stabilize housing again. For example, when this might happen, especially like in a rapid rehousing project or permanent supportive subsidy project, is maybe your program is providing the subsidies for the housing, but you don't actually own their unit, that you had to contract with a landlord for that unit for your client. And if the landlord evicts your client for any number of reasons, then and your client becomes homeless, we need to exit them from your program, and then you can enroll them on the same day, but we need to do that in order to capture the housing status. And how that would look is like this. So in this example, we have a person who was enrolled in a permanent housing project, which could be rapid rehousing or a PSH project with subsidies. And they were enrolled on January 30th. And then on February 15th in this example, they moved into their housing, so they have a move-in date. But then on April 30th, they became homeless because their landlord evicted them. So they no longer have that place. They're now in a place not meant for human habitation, but you're still providing services because you're trying to get them back into housing. So what you're going to do is, the day they become homeless again, you're going to exit them from the program, but you're going to start a second enrollment on the same day. So you'll see the 430 and the 430 here. And so they'll spend a period of time where they're homeless a second time, but when they receive that second move-in date, and on this example, it was June 1st, you can then continue as you had previously. So the next thing I want to show you is editing a closed program enrollment, and when and why would we do this. So there are two most common reasons why we would need to edit a closed program enrollment. The first one is we closed it by mistake and we need to reopen it. So that typically happens where I get this information is I will get an email from a provider saying, I exited this person by mistake, I mixed up the names, and I actually need their program enrollment reactivated. That is not something you need to have me do, it's something you can do, and I'm going to show you how to do it. The other times we need to edit close program enrollments is when we are trying to clean up our data for submitting reports to places like HUD or to some of our other funders, and we find errors in the data. Typical errors might be that we're missing the annual assessment, or maybe under the program enrollment we have a child listed as the head of household. Those are some of the common ones where we need to go in and edit the program enrollment and then reclose it. So to reopen a program enrollment so we can make edits, it's really easy. We're going to go back into the program exit screen. We're going to make sure we write down the exit date. Is if we're only making an edit, we're going to be putting it back later. We want to not forget. And then we're going to delete that exit date and save it. Then we're going to make our edits, and then we're going to put the exit date back. So to show you how it looks, this is a closed enrollment. So if I needed to make an edit because I have no annual assessment here or no status assessment, and I needed to get that into the system, or if I needed to provide a service, because you'll notice right here, we cannot provide services in a closed program enrollment. That's only available when it's an active enrollment. So I'm going to go to exit, and then I have the exit date of 01/02/2019. So I'm going to write that down so I don't forget. Then I'm going to delete it. And all it did was highlight and delete. Scroll all the way down to the bottom and hit Save Changes. My changes have been saved, and you'll see I now have an active program enrollment. And if I hit refresh, and this was in the city of West Sacramento. I need to change my agency. So now I have the ability to provide services. I can also do my assessment. So let's say I was just missing my assessment. They were enrolled on the 31st and we exited them on the 2nd. Maybe I did an assessment where we'll just change one thing just to and maybe they gained some income and they got their SSDI and they're getting $1,200 a month. I can now hit save and close. And if I needed to provide a service, I would be able to provide a service on as long as there's services that I can provide. For this particular program enrollment, there was only one service. So if they needed a bed night on that night, which was 01/01/2019, and I hit submit, and now under history, I have my bed night, I've got my status assessment in here, and now I can put my exit date back. And when I'm all done, I go down and hit Save Changes. And if I go back to Programs, everything looks the same as it was. So those are the times that we would need to edit a closed program enrollment. As I said, is if it was closed by mistake, all we need to do is remove the exit date and we can continue business as usual with providing services and the annual and status assessments. If we were making edits to the program enrollment, like changing the head of household, recording a service that we forgot, or a status assessment that we forgot, then we can go in and make those edits. Does anybody have any questions about making edits to a closed program enrollment?